Inzamam, what's the latest with this new round of strikes?
So we're just getting within the last hour or so, Anna, that the UAE's Ministry of Defense are intercepting or trying to intercept a barrage of Iranian missiles and drones coming into the country for a second day in a row now. We're not exactly sure where the target is, which city or town Iran is specifically trying to target, whether the UAE is managing to intercept these missiles and drones before they land on UAE territory. But there's clearly, once again, military action taking place for a second day in a row. This was after yesterday. The UAE said they intercepted 15 missiles and 4 drones fired from Iran. This was the first time that Iran had attacked the UAE since the ceasefire started on the 8th of April, so just shy of a month ago. There was one drone that set a large fire at the Fujairah Petroleum Industries zone, which had also wounded 3 people there, 3 Indian nationals. And that caused a huge concern because there was a large fire, smoke billowing out of this sector, which is essentially an energy site. And clearly Iran decided to go on the offensive yesterday and target that specific site. We'd also yesterday seen that Iran had targeted a couple of UAE vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, one which was carrying oil from the UAE and trying to bypass the Strait of Hormuz just off the coast of the country. So there was an escalation from Iran yesterday. And I think the big question was whether we saw that as just a bit of a blip, whether it was just a kind of a one-time attack for Iran to just flex their military might to show the Gulf states, but also to Israel and the US that they can very much still fire missiles and drones, that they can inflict pain and cause damage and cause disruption in places like the UAE. But then last night we heard directly from the foreign minister of Iran as well, Anna, and he said that the events in Hormuz make clear that there's no military solution to a political crisis. As talks are making progress with Pakistan's gracious effort, the US should be wary of being dragged back into quagmire by ill wishes. So should the UAE. Project Freedom is Project Deadlock. That was a direct threat towards the UAE, marking their card essentially not to get involved in this conflict, or else you will see the consequences of it. But the latest here is that fighter jets have been scrambling over the last hour or so, and Iran continue their rocket fire into the UAE for a second day now.
Guys, I want to play more of what we heard from Secretary Hegseth this morning. Take a listen.
To be clear, this operation is separate and distinct from Operation Epic Fury. Project Freedom is defensive in nature, focused in scope, and temporary in duration, with one mission: protecting innocent commercial shipping from Iranian aggression.
Barbara, what do you make of the administration's effort to disconnect Project Freedom from Operation Epic Fury?
Well, I think they clearly want to do that so they can maintain their position that the ceasefire from major combat operations remains in effect. They don't want to get back into that. The president, well aware of public opinion about the war in the United States, and there's really no indication he wants to get back into major combat operations. So they're going to try and do that. But, you know, the reality is, I think, that if you are a service member in this region and Iran attacks where you are, doesn't really matter. You're under attack.
General Kane elaborated more on the ceasefire this morning. Let's watch that.
Since the ceasefire was announced, Iran has fired at commercial vessels 9 times and seized 2 container ships. And they've attacked U.S. forces more than 10 times, all below the threshold of restarting major combat operations at this point.
General Clark, if U.S. forces getting attacked more than 10 times during the ceasefire doesn't meet that threshold to restart combat operations, what would?
Well, I think what the United States is doing is following what is the least worst strategy you could follow right now in this case of the Strait of Hormuz. That is to say, We're calling for an open strait. We're willing to guide vessels through, and the attack on those vessels, the onus is on Iran. They are the ones who are operating illegally. Now, that's the overall strategic picture that the United States is trying to paint, and that's what General Kane was attempting to show. The question is where this goes from here. So during this, obviously, we're collecting strategic and tactical intelligence on everything Iran's doing. We're looking for future targets. We probably have underwater reconnaissance going in. We're preparing to do more with force in the Strait of Hormuz if we have to. But we would like Iran to sort of gracefully back away during this period of negotiations. So it's still in play right now. Yes, it's a risk for our service members, and certainly it's wrong that UAE's been struck and these innocent vessels have been hit. But we're moving through a period of diplomacy backed by force on both sides. But we've avoided general escalation thus far.
And I just want to note that as we're continuing our discussion, we're also monitoring the president who's speaking in the Oval Office right now at some kind of fitness proclamation type event. And we'll be listening to see if he says anything about the Iran war situation. Arash, what are leaders in Iran thinking after hearing that Pentagon presser this morning and the latest narrative coming from the Trump administration?
Well, I think they're happy that they have, done these attacks without the ceasefire being broken. It's clearly that, they sort of tested the limits a little bit. Their goal by targeting UAE is to drive a wedge between UAE and other countries in the region. There are already some rifts within UAE and its major partners like Saudi Arabia, and they want to basically warn the UAE, don't get too close to the Israelis. Don't sort of agitate against Iran as it had in the previous days, or you will face an attack. And frankly, it's somewhat worked so far. But I mean, if they target the UAE and the ceasefire is not broken, it looks like they were able to isolate UAE. Although Saudi Arabia has condemned the attacks, Pakistan has condemned the attacks, and all the countries have condemned the attacks. But nevertheless, Iran has sort of gotten away with targeting the UAE.
Yeah, and there's more incoming today, it sounds like, in Zamam, as you've been reporting, that as they're getting targeted, they're preparing a severe retaliatory response. What could that look like?
Look, it's difficult to understand exactly what the response will be, even if there will be one. There's been huge amounts of condemnation. There's been a lot of anger as well, particularly from the UAE. Look, they've had a very good success rate when it comes to their defense mechanism, actually stopping any of these missiles and drones hitting many of the targets. Yes, yesterday we saw, of course, that petroleum site be struck, and we've seen a few other sites over the 2 months of this conflict being hit. However, the defense system has been very good. And on this point of trying to drive a wedge, Iran's trying to drive a wedge between the UAE and other Gulf nations, well, the UAE has been very clear. It's doubled down on its relationship with Israel. The war on Iran and Iran's retaliatory strikes into the Gulf countries has only made the UAE-Israeli relationship a lot stronger. We've seen Israel has provided defense systems to the UAE over the last couple of months as well. And so the partnership between the two countries is very, very tight. And so I've not heard this directly, but there may well be some conversations between the UAE and with Israel, including the US, about what a proportionate response looks like, if that's something that they want to take. Yesterday, I was hearing that there will be some form of response, that there'll be revenge on Iran, but it's not entirely clear what that looks like. We haven't seen the US and Israel retaliate into Iran. There was some reports earlier today suggesting that there may have been strikes in Iran. That's not been confirmed or verified as of yet. But I think we're in a situation where, because it's so precarious, where the diplomacy is taking place on one side, and then this Iranian offensive took place yesterday, the big question is what risk does the US and Israel actually take here? Do they go full military action and reignite the hostilities of this conflict? Or do we go down the path of diplomacy and try and get a conclusive ending to this war, which I think what most sides truly want from this, Anna.
General Clark, Iran is clearly not backing down in this moment. Iran's parliament speaker says Iran sees this war as, quote, unbearable for the United States, adding that Iran has not even started yet. General, Iran has had weeks, of course, to rebuild and restock amid this ceasefire. Meantime, President Trump says Iran's navy has been obliterated. Just how much more aggressive can Iran get?
Well, they could fire more missiles and so forth. And the point is that you can't look at this as black or white diplomacy or gunboat fire. I mean, this is both simultaneously. And so it's a game of chicken. The United States is trying to get the strait open and force Iran into the position of being the bad actor by keeping it closed. At the same time, there's diplomatic discussion going on. So we have to understand the subtlety of what's happening here. This is not, you cannot say it's war or peace, ceasefire or not ceasefire. This is an operation to restore freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, the United States and Iran are grappling with the larger issues. And the United States has said we're not going to wait for the larger issues to be resolved, which might take weeks or months, before we demand that the strait be open. And we're not going to accept that Iran owns the strait. So that's we've already put down our first bargaining position by moving the 2 destroyers through yesterday and getting a couple of ships through. We'll see what we do next on this. But it is a combination of force and diplomacy.